offering free tutoring to struggling readers who are willing to try this out-of-the-box approach. And at this time, I would introduce to you Mr. Stephen Round, who is accompanied this evening with his wife Susan, who is also an educator, Cole, who is a student in the public school system, and his mother, Suzanne.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me to stand before you all this evening. For the past week or so, I've agonized over what I might say tonight. If you've seen my resignation speech on YouTube, you might be expecting me to address the plight of our inner city schools and what I see happening to public education since the No Child Left Behind Act became law in 2001. But this audience is here tonight for a specific reason, to raise funds for the Dyslexia Center of Rhode Island. And dyslexia is my favorite subject. So I've decided instead to tell you a story about an experience that I had as a brand new second grade teacher at the Charles N. Fort's Magnet Academy, which was not and is not far from here, way back in 1999. Although this was my first year of teaching full-time in a public school, I had already had 2 years of experience teaching at the now defunct St. Bartholomew's Elementary School in the Silver Lake section of Providence. I had also experienced a full year of substitute teaching in several other Rhode Island communities, but I was under no illusion that I had attained anything close to proficiency in working with primary school students. I knew I still had a lot to learn. Anyway, in 1999, I had a little boy named Emmanuel in my second grade classroom who absolutely could not read the simplest text, no matter how hard he tried. Everyone who had attempted to work with him over the years, his family, his kindergarten teacher, his first grade teacher, school psychologist, reading specialists, and special ed teachers, all had eventually given up in frustration, and so had he. His behavior was terrible. His grades were awful. He refused to pay attention in class and often simply went to sleep. This poor guy knew that he was smart but couldn't figure out what he was doing wrong. He had become so frustrated that one day he actually hauled off and hit me, right in the middle of class. And after a call to the office, he was dragged out by the behavior specialist to spend the rest of the day with the principal and the school psychologist. But I knew there was something standing in the way of his progress, and I was even more determined to find out what it was. Then one day in February, I was observing Emmanuel and another boy partner reading on the rug. The other student was a much better reader, and I assumed that he was doing all of the reading and Emmanuel was simply sitting there listening. I had even more reason to believe that this was the case because they were sitting face to face rather than side by side. You can imagine how surprised I was when I noticed when the other boy would get stuck on a word, Emmanuel would lean over and help him figure it out, completely upside down. How was that possible? I quietly walked over and watched what he was doing. The other boy was holding the book, and Emmanuel was looking over the top of the book. To him, everything was upside down and backwards, but Emmanuel could make perfect sense of it. I called him up to my desk and asked him if it was easier for him to read upside down, and he said, "Yes, Mr. Round, it was." I was shocked. I immediately took out a simple first grade text, one that he had never been able to read before, and he proceeded to read it perfectly, completely upside down. I gave him a harder book, and the same thing happened. I grabbed his hand and his books, and we went straight down to the principal. Up until that day, the only time that she had ever seen Emmanuel was when he was in trouble. But today, both of us were smiling. I said, "Mrs. Owen, I want you to meet the absolutely best upside-down reader I have ever seen." And she gave me a look I will never forget. Emmanuel walked around the desk and stood right up next to her. And he proceeded to read on level, a second grade book, fluently and with feeling, completely upside down. We praised him, she hugged him, we called his mom with the good news. I wrote a good note home that afternoon and told his mom to just encourage him to keep doing exactly what he was doing and not to question what or why. Emmanuel went on through the semester reading that way. He even went into other teachers' classrooms to demonstrate his talent to the rest of the student body. His self-respect and confidence skyrocketed. No more behavior problems. No more struggling. By the end of the year, Emmanuel was on level with his peers. On the last day of school, his mom came to me to thank me for literally and figuratively turning Emmanuel around. She continued to call me for a few years after that to tell me how well he was doing at his new school. The remarkable thing she said was that over the summer, Emmanuel had taught himself how to read right side up, all on his own. Wow. During the months that I worked with Emmanuel, I did my best to find information on the internet and at the local libraries on upside-down reading, but I found nothing. Some people said that they had heard of it and that they thought it was some kind of a rare form of dyslexia. But to their knowledge, no studies had ever been done and nothing had been written on it. Well, I figured that Emmanuel was a one-in-a-million kid, and life went on. I lost touch with him and his mom, but continued to teach both first and second grades. And I never thought much about upside-down reading until the spring of 2009. At that time, I had two very bright first grade boys who were turning out to be just like Emmanuel was. 6 months had gone by with no progress in learning how to read, and they both exhibited all the same negative behaviors. Then one day it hit me. Upside-down readers. I called the boys up one at a time and had each boy try it. Success! Both boys did significantly better upside down than they had ever done in the normal way. And from that day on, I have made it a point to find out everything I could about this phenomenon and how it might be used to help other struggling readers. Tonight I have two guests with me whom I've been tutoring for the last several months, Suzanne and her son Cole. Both are dyslexic and both have experienced most of the negative effects of having dyslexia. On the other hand, both have had positive experiences both with the Rhode Island Dyslexia Center and my out-of-the-box intervention, print and version. To tell you about their experiences with both the Dyslexia Center and PI, here are Suzanne and Cole Arena.
Hey Cole, relax, you're on America's Got Talent.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for allowing us to come and share some of our experiences.
Good evening.
I am very grateful to the Children's Dyslexia Center. My son, about 2.5 years ago, was reading about 3 grades behind. So there was a huge gap. And since he was about 2.5, 3, there's always been behavior problems when it came to learning letters or reading, learning numbers. So what happened was we worked with various psychologists over the years. He's had lots of interventions. Nobody could really figure out what it was. And like Mr. Round was saying, there was something underneath that I just knew there was something that was wrong with him, but it wasn't what they had touched upon. Anyhow, somebody had told me about the Children's Dyslexia Center and how we could get free tutoring. As a single mom, and I was out of work, I didn't really have the money to spend on $65 on tutoring. So I came down and your center took my son in after a short wait period, and he started the grueling task of learning how to decode. To a child that has attention span of an ant at that time, it was really difficult because he hated school at that point. He was in the 4th grade. 4th grade in the Cranston school systems, reading at 1st grade level. Doing homework was really difficult, that sort of thing. So he started using the decoding that we learned through Orton Gillingham, And he would fight me every single week, twice a week. We'd have to go, really? Do I have to go? I don't want to learn this. Yes, we went begrudgingly, and he started learning how to break down words, how to sound TH and other sounds that most people take for granted. I don't know how, I didn't learn any of this when I was a kid, because I found out through him that I'm dyslexic as well. I'm not dumb. And there were other things that are systemic to children that are known to be dyslexic. 1 in 5 children have it. There's different variables. We're very bright. I was lucky I could memorize. Cole was not so lucky. His executive function wasn't as good as mine, but everybody's different. So he went through the center, and he made slow progress. It was about 2.5 years. He had come up about a level and a half, that grade-wise. Then I had seen the same video that you were talking about on Huntington Post on YouTube. It was all over. That this teacher had quit. And I was amazed. I'm like, I have got to get my hands on this guy. I've got to find him. I'm a community activist. I am a parent advocate, and I help other parents. I go with them, and I try and help them with dyslexia, autism, whatever it is. I do it on my own, kind of like you. You volunteer and you do things for the community and the better of people. That's what I would do. So I wanted to get a hold of this man and see if he could help my son. Because I was at wit's end. He's going into the 5th grade the next year. They didn't want to offer him services. And yet I'm watching these videos of things where he's showing kids reading that could never read before. So I got a hold, I didn't get a hold of him initially. He found me. I started with the pie reading when you do a test online, and you read these random letters. This is the perfect example to make you understand. So there's a word find. It just has letters that you look at. I read it conventionally, and I read it, let's say, 6 seconds. Then I turned it around, my 10-year-old timed me, and I read it in 3 seconds upside down. I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. That, to me, was testament that I could do better reading upside down. I had my son do it. He did the same as I did. Then my 10-year-old, who is not dyslexic, took much longer. So what happened was, we went through, Steve, I think it was about 6 months ago, and we started doing, on top of the children's dyslexia tutoring, we started working with Steve. It seemed kind of strange to me, the whole idea, reading upside down. Reading sideways. But I gotta tell you, the first time I did it and watched him, he was slow, but not as slow as he had been. About a month went by, and I listened to my son, and I held back tears, hearing that he was reading upside down, and I couldn't believe it was this simple. And that everyone seems to fight the thought of turning it upside down. How easy is this? So I've turned many parents over to Steve that he has helped, and I have one letter from a parent that I'd like to read you. It's very short, but it surmises exactly the sentiment that we all feel. If you'll indulge me, I'll read this very quickly. Cole, do you have any words to say? Is there something you'd like to say? Thank you? No? Okay.
He wants a different dessert.
All right, yeah, your dessert. So this is from a parent. Mason has an IEP and has received services since he was in preschool. My husband and I had Mason independently tested when he was in grade 1. His neurologist diagnosed him with dyslexia and ADD. This is similar to our situation. Mason was put on the waiting list at the Dyslexia Center for Children and began tutoring in 2011. Mason's reading improved. However, he was always 1 grade level behind his reading. I was introduced to Steve and his method of reading by a friend of mine. He graciously accepted the tutor, sorry, I read very fast. He graciously accepted to tutor my son on a voluntary basis. He worked so well with Mason. He took the time and was impressed at how well Mason took to this concept of reading upside down. I have to admit that I was a little unsure at first, but that all changed when I went to meet with his parent conference last week. In the 4 months of working with Steve Round and Mason's reading improved. Mason's reading has improved to the point where he is now actually reading at grade level. He has been taken out of his special ed class and put into a reading group in the regular education classroom. Mason can read with confidence now, and that is priceless to me. I hope more children will be exposed to Steve Round's method, which has made a huge difference in our lives. So I just want to share with you that that is a similar situation with my son. He is reading at grade level. He has never gotten an A in his life. And he called me at work with tears and said, "Mom, are you sitting down?" And he read the A's and B's that he got. I was astounded that in a couple of months, working with Steve Round, and on his own, he picks up a book now and reads for fun. I thought this was a joke. So anyhow, I just want you to know that this really is a meaningful program that Steve offers that's very easy. And to just be aware, if you hear of any children or any families, the Dyslexia Children's Center is great. Direct them to Pi Reading, or get a hold of me. I will help parents and just kind of give support any way I can. Thank you.